You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in. We were really
a Mamma Mia podcast.
Have you ever wondered what goes on in a strip club? How lap dancers actually work? How the women who strip and dance for a living in these clubs feel about their customers and their own bodies? Today, we're going to find out.
You have to go through their judgment and scrutiny, which is pretty much along the lines of, nah, tit's not big enough on that one. Nah, that one's got a face like a smashed crab.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, a weekly interview podcast with people who tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be all kinds of vulnerable. My guest today is a woman by the name of Samantha C. Ross. But if you ran into Samantha until about 5 years ago in a strip club, you wouldn't have known her as Samantha. You would have known her as Sunshine. That was her professional name. It was her stripping name, and it was the persona that she took on every time she went to work. Now Samantha has written a book, and we sat down to talk about it. You can imagine that I had a lot of burning questions. Here to tell you about the good, the bad, and the messy is Samantha C. Ross, Sunshine.
Sam, do you remember the first time you took your clothes off in front of people that you weren't in an intimate relationship with?
That would be stripping. Yes, I remember that night.
What was your first night stripping like?
It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. Not because I have a problem with nudity, but because every single thing that you get to scrutinize alone in the bathroom is now on show. Dimples in your ass and shaving rash and, you know, just all of those things that you get to look at close up alone are now right there for everybody to see. You just live the majority of your life not thinking that you're going to get money for showing your vagina. You think that that's always going to be something that stays intimate between another man or woman. But it worked well because I think I looked so insecure and uncertain. There were like those seasoned veteran strip club dwellers that were just breaking a leg to get to the stage to see the new insecure girl.
Where were you at in your life?
I had already finished uni and was already working in marketing. So it was really funny. I'd sort of done it the opposite way. I'd earned my degree and was just so incredibly fucking bored. And the only good thing about working in marketing in an office was that sometimes people had birthdays and there was free cake. It's really nothing exciting about it. But it just so happened I was doing marketing at a sports bar and it had a strip club attached. And probably much like the public, I sort of thought, you know, those naughty girls, they're mysterious and they take their clothes off and they do something I would never do. And I had a peek and I just crept next door and had a peek and was not prepared for the glamour. It didn't turn out to be wholly glamorous, but most certainly just watching the girls walk in, you know, in their expensive country road casuals, getting there late in the afternoon to get ready for a 5 o'clock shift because that one was quite an early start strip club. But, you know, just the thought of sleeping in and not having to get out of bed in the Arctic Melbourne winter and pouncing about in a bikini and laughing with champagne, it just appealed to me like a million spare bucks.
What's the process then? Do you have to audition?
No. At some places in Australia you do. Some places are quite strict. I believe Love and Rockets in Brisbane. I'm not sure if it still exists, but I believe that had a pretty strict audition process. Same as overseas, you usually have to audition, but nobody really says no. But no, the managers were thrilled. I think, you know, the whole idea of seeing someone that's in a professional environment is going to take their clothes off. I think that thrills most men, and all of the managers were men. So they're like, wow, our marketing manager is going to get naked. Fantastic.
I wanted to ask you about body image because we're now seeing a lot more diversity thanks to social media in the types of women that we see in the public eye, and from influencers to models in magazines and in advertising campaigns. Is there any or much body diversity within strip clubs and within the stripping industry?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Strip clubs is all about diversity. A very big public misconception would be that all strippers are going to be a perfect little size 8, and that is just not the case at all. I worked with a girl who was probably a curvy size 16, and her confidence was astounding, and so it should be. And her voice and her laughter and her smile, it just lit up the room, and men would flock to her. And there was girls that were super, super, super thin. So there were girls that were really, really skinny, and they would do really well. And then there was lots and lots and lots of size 12s. So, you know, men are not just there for the diversity of another vagina, not wanting to look at only their wife or girlfriend's vagina and, you know, get to splash out on having a look at a few others. It was really about diverse personalities and body types as well.
On that first night, how did you know what to do?
I had watched the girls the night before, but I didn't really. I had a fair idea, and I probably looked ridiculous. I probably looked a lot more like I was imitating Beyonce than moving sensuously. So it takes a little while to get it. And the first night you start, you just kind of gaze around. I mean, as I said, it was very profitable for me because guys just seem to love innocence, especially in a strip club, or innocence that they can actually get to. But just watching the girls, you start to pick up your tips, as well as the way you move. I mean, it helps if you move like you're drenched in sexualism. You also get to begin your stripper persona as well, because it just won't work if you're yourself.
Tell me about that.
Well, firstly, you're not as resilient if you're going to walk into a strip club as yourself. You need to find a persona. All the degradation that comes with the job can get to you way too easily.
Tell me about your persona. How did you choose it and how did you form it? And what are some of the other personas of the girls that you were friends with?
I think resilience was the first thing. I got my boobs done when I was stripping, and I had a pretty small bust before that. And guys that were fans of large busts were merciless about it. And they would just make stupid small tit jokes all the time. So, you know, you kind of have to build up. Your resilience is first. It's the first thing that has to be built up.
That sounds hideous.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. There's guys that will literally lean over and look straight at your vagina and say, well, not at your vagina, at your G-string, and say, is that a shaving rash? They're horrendous. There's guys that would like reach over and try and pull at your leg to see if there's any stubble there. It's really judgmental. A lot of bastards go to strip clubs, and I think it's a perfect place for them to, you know, throw around their judgment or take out every single woman that's rejected them. They feel like strippers are in less of a position to gain respect. So they come and take that kind of shit out on us.
How did you develop your stripper persona?
Just by speaking to a lot of different guys and gauging exactly what they wanted. So they always want to laugh. They always wanted something funny. So you obtain wit pretty quickly. But you also have to know adaptability. So there are some men that do come in there to have a fantastic conversation before they see you naked, and that might include politics. And then there's some guys that want you to be an idiot. So you have to giggle and say, I don't know anything about world tissues. So it's about adaptability, and just it takes a while, but having the intuition to know what each guy is looking for. But then there's some girls that just stick to one role. You know, there's some girls who are just so naturally sexy and steamier than a Brazilian rainforest and just move with cat-like grace. And there's a girl I know that doesn't speak. She just looks at men. She's quite beautiful. And she just looks at men and just has them mesmerized, and they follow in a trance with their wallets open. And then some are coy, some are matey, some are stupid. Well, not stupid, but act stupid. There's a lot of stereotypes. You know, there's a lot of sort of Marilyn Monroe type personas. You kind of stick to one. Mine was a combination of, I guess, witty, friendly, and mysterious. So my friends used to describe me as an assassin that you could joke out of not taking your balls.
Well, I was going to say, what was the difference between Sunshine and Sam?
There's a lot of difference. I'm pretty down to earth, whereas I'm a bit more theatrical and once again will adapt to what a guy is looking for. So, I can click from being intelligent to a bimbo, just like that.
Tell me about some of your regulars and what was a regular, first of all.
A regular is a man that is there to see you and only you. They are basically your bread and butter, and it's always bittersweet to have them there. It's a fabulous night when they walk through the door because that's it. Your money is counted on. There's some regulars that are worth $300, and then there's some regulars that are worth between $1,000 and $2,000.
And that's how much they'll spend on a single time when they're there?
Yeah, some will stay the whole night. You can make up to $2,000 from regulars. The other girls generally won't go near them because it's a stripper law that you just do not approach another girl's regular customer.
Tell me about some of your regulars.
They were pretty grotesque. So in that sense, you are paid to tolerate. It's not so much the nudity. It's the bits in between the lap dances where you have to sit there drinking with them. So I did have a regular that grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And when I say farm, I mean like thousands and thousands and thousands of hectares in the middle of Australia. And his only form of getting to see females naked was his own sister. So I would dance for him and have to pretend that he wasn't saying things like, you're giving me naughty thoughts, sis. That was pretty revolting. And then there was .com, who had made a fortune out of the tech industry and was wily enough to cut holes in his pants so he could fiddle with himself while I was dancing for him and I couldn't see. But I did catch him in the end. There was a really obese mortician that would get turned on by different bizarre tales of death.
That you would have to talk to him about?
Yeah, for the whole night. There's that strange awards, and they usually make a show out of it yearly about the most bizarre way people can die, like choking on trying to swallow a whole hot dog or sitting on a bottle of Coke or stuff like that, really bizarre deaths. And you could literally see this guy's heart on while you were talking about bizarre deaths. So that would have to go on all night long because regulars pay you to talk to them and dance for them in the intervals.
Can you tell me about how the money works? So for people who don't understand how strippers earn their money, I learnt so much from reading your book about the mechanics of how a club works and what a stripper gets paid to do and some of the rules.
It's very tame in gentlemen's bars. And it does change as well from each state and each club. So it's really up to the club manager's discretion. Some clubs you're allowed to do open leg work, which means showing your vagina with no pants on. But some managers prefer you not to do it. So they get you to cover yourself while your legs are open. That's probably not so much a thing anymore. Most clubs are now just full leg open, no pants.
Is that now the expectation of patrons, that that's what they'll get to see at a strip club?
Yeah, I would say so. It was really only a few clubs that the managers preferred we cover our bits when our legs were open.
Is it the perception that that's more classy?
No, I think they just didn't want to invite trouble, I mean, guys can get pretty out of hand and try and lunge for you. It doesn't happen often, but I think some managers were just a little bit fearful of causing that extra intent. But most strip clubs are open leg. You can't touch yourself. Females can't touch themselves during a lap dance, and neither can a man. There are some clubs in Australia where breasts and arse can be touched. And I think that varies from state. So I'm not sure. New South Wales never used to be touching. I'm not sure if it is now. Queensland become touching. So you could touch breasts. You couldn't touch stomach or anywhere near the vagina, but you could also touch bottoms. And I believe that is also Victoria as well.
How much could you make in a night, in a good night? And then what would happen on a bad night?
I think the best I ever did in the one night was $3,500. I mean, unless you're pretty high class. I don't think call girls get that kind of, I mean, they might, I don't know. I've never been a call girl. But from some of the call girls that used to come in for a drink, they didn't earn the same kind of money that we did. So it was sort of moot. It was why would you bother when you can stay in the safety of a club? I did start out doing a bit of lingerie waitressing at bucks parties, and that was agency work. And some of the agency strippers would come and do bucks party shows, and they were pretty full on. They were like whipped cream and dildos. And while I'm prepared to get naked and I'm prepared to open my legs and show my bits, I'm not prepared to use sex toys in front of men. So I guess there's different levels. Not that I judge anybody that does it. It's just not something I fit comfortably with.
It was so interesting, yeah, because you have to pay the strip club.
Yes, we do. So look at it as they're the shopping centre and we're the little shops that rent space. And every club works differently. Some clubs will just give you a $150 flat fee at the end of the night. And some clubs will take 15% of every dance. Some clubs will take 30% of the entire night. So it's really up to the club. But the clubs do pretty well out of the girls. Yeah, but no, we don't earn anything unless we do a stage show. Our stage shows in gentlemen's bars are very opposing to the bucks party ones. So ours are very glamour and feathers and sequins and very Vegas show-like, rather than sex toys and whipped cream and chocolate sauce.
And so do you get paid extra for doing a stage show?
Yeah, but not much. Maybe $100 if you're lucky.
And so then what's the process of getting someone to part with their money?
Just what we were talking about before, adaptability. So I would walk over and chat to somebody, find out a little bit about them. And if you get somebody talking about themselves, they're pretty much party in your hands. And you would think girls love talking about themselves, but I'll tell you, guys love it far more. And then as soon as you find out what they do, you go in for the kill by making them feel like a king. So even if somebody is a plumber, and you somehow have to make that sound like the most fascinating profession in the world by going, just tell me, what's the most interesting thing you've ever had to pull out of a drain? And have you been down into the sewage system? Is it true that there's crocodiles in the sewage systems? And just keep the conversation kind of fascinating and funny, but also by making them feel like their profession is just incredibly fascinating. And once you've got that, once you've done that, you pretty much have them eating out of your hand.
And then how do you bring up the subject of giving you money?
Okay, so that's when you get all Marilyn Monroe and you suggest that perhaps we could carry on this conversation while I'm naked in the lap dance room. Or maybe we don't even have to talk and you could just watch me take all my clothes off.
Oh, listen how your voice has changed.
Yeah. So you get that voice going on and you simper, basically. But you've already caught them. You've already got them once you had them talking about themselves for long enough and made them feel like the focus on them is really, really important. So they feel like the only man alive, the only man in the room, and that, it's good to even pretend a little bit of interest in them. Just say things that insinuate, like, where do you live? And just say, I was working in Melbourne. And they're like, oh, I live in Footscray. And you're like, oh, that's just down the road from me in Seddon. Now, I never lived in Seddon, but it insinuates, it's subliminal. It insinuates we're not far from each other if I were to see you out of work, which would never, ever happen. But a lot of insinuation and just telling men exactly what they would like to hear.
Do some men get confused and try to see you outside of work and think maybe you're their girlfriend or could be their girlfriend?
Your regulars think that you're their girlfriend anyway because they are so faithful to you. And let's not forget, these regulars are quite warped individuals. Most of them have never had a girlfriend. A lot of them can't get it up for either psychological or physical reasons.
And they tell you that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, nothing's off limits. No limits. Yeah, the farmer regular still came all the way to see me from that farm in the middle of nowhere in Western Australia. He would fly to Cairns just to see me.
Do you ever And I say this without judgment. It's a genuine question. Did you ever feel guilty for exploiting, in quote marks, exploiting these men for money?
No, they would be just as nice to the next stripper. If it's not me, it's going to be someone else. These men are seeking out companionship and nudity. And if I don't jump on the bandwagon, somebody else will, and they're going to be taken advantage of somewhere else. And I mean, you know, let's face it, they're not there for the camping expo. The minute they slapped aftershave on themselves, they were coming to see a vagina. So in a roundabout way, they have no respect for you, just as I had such little respect for manipulating them. You know, I figure I'm being objectified once they walk through the club, and sure, I allow that. I allow the objectification to happen, but you would be an idiot not to recognize chauvinism and take advantage of it and not turn that objectification into manipulation of their wallets.
Do any of them get possessive?
No, I was lucky. Some would. We had a couple of guys like hide outside the club behind cars and stuff and try and follow us home. That never happened to me. In fact, the worst that happened to me wasn't even a regular customer, but I used to get a cab to work all the time because I drank while I was at work. And I was dropped off by a cab driver. And because every morning I was a little bit shit-faced, and I would never really notice the cab driver. So it could have been one of 100. But one of them was whacking off on my lawn. He dropped me off, and then half an hour later, I heard the sound of a maxi cab. And there was a guy downstairs in a cab uniform, like literally yanking his dick on my front lawn. Now, I don't know if he had been in the strip club and had seen me naked, because I still to this day don't know which cab driver it was. But they can get a little bit spooky, yeah.
When cab drivers or Uber drivers used to ask you what you did, what would you say?
Well, they knew what I did. They were dropping me off at the door.
And what would be the biggest misconception about strippers?
That we're stupid. That would definitely be the biggest misconception. I think it's a really old, outdated misconception that we're either unintelligent or desperate or getting the money together to avoid a beating from our pimp or our next fix. Most strippers are very intelligent and wily girls, and the ones who will admit it out loud have the same kind of unapologetic attitude as I do. It's just that we think outside the box and not ashamed of being nude. I think our real crime is laziness. We want a lot of money and we don't want to do a whole lot for it.
You're listening to No Filter with me, Mia Friedman, and Samantha C. Ross.
I imagine you have to do quite a lot to maintain your physical appearance if you're going to be naked and scrutinised on a stage under lights every night. What are some of the things that strippers have to do, and what are some of the tricks you learn to make your body look hot every night at work?
An outfit that suits you perfectly is always a good one, just dressing to your body shape. So girls with tummies would wear corsets, and that way they wouldn't have to remove them because you could just take your bra and pants off. I mean, keeping fit is always a great idea anyway.
What about pubes?
Well, you either go landing strip or Brazilian. It's either a little bit or none. No one wants the 70 pornos look.
I thought it might be making a comeback.
No.
Not in strip clubs, hey?
It might. I haven't stripped in a few years. It might. You never know. There is strip club fads, definitely. But no, you know what? I was pretty lazy and I was terrible as well. If I was putting weight on, I wouldn't do it the healthy way. I would starve myself for days to try and get a flat stomach again. And then I'd just binge on my days off. So no, it was a bit of a shocker. But, you know, I mean, there were some girls that are really dedicated to the gym. And they're usually the showgirls that go on to do things like Miss Nude Australia and Miss Nude World.
Is there a hierarchy among strippers in terms of who's at the top of the tree? Would you be at the top of the tree?
Mostly with the Penthouse Pets.
Is that still a thing? I thought those magazines all closed.
Penthouse? No, that was only a few months ago. Penthouse went online.
So that was still a thing, being a penthouse pet, and that was high status.
Yeah, that's like, that's the silver medal of being a stripper. Being a penthouse pet. The gold medal is Miss Nude World, which is performed in Adelaide. Even though it's an entirely Miss Nude World, so they come from all over. Yeah, that Miss Nude World is judged in Adelaide, of all places, and girls would train for that. They would start by doing shows in their own state and winning titles like, you know, Miss Nude Queensland or Miss Hawaiian Tropic, and just a lot of different little titles. But really you were striving to get to penthouse. And the majority, well, maybe not the majority, but a good percentage of penthouse girls you see are strippers.
What about when you get your period?
Oh, you just roll up the string on the tampon so you can fish it out later on. But I had a few idiot friends that have cut the string off and spent the morning in emergency getting it fished back out.
Tell me about Bucks nights.
They're horrendous. They're just horrendous. So they're not all there for lap dances, and all of their money is really going to the bar, and they'll all throw in to have one lap dance or buy one lap dance for the buck. But in the interim, you have to go through their judgment and scrutiny, which is pretty much along the lines of, nah, tits not big enough on that one. Nah, that one's got a face like a smashed crab. Nah, that one's vagina looks like wet lettuce. It's just a degrading. Most strippers didn't really want to go near them. There is a few strippers that are great with them and are that resilient that they actually think that bawdiness is quite funny, but I never did. I would run a mile when I saw them coming through the door because it's a lot of heartache and trauma for such little return.
Right. And you also said that the father-in-law, either of the groom or the bride, was always the worst behaved. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. God knows why. It's just like black holes and pyramids. It's just a fucking mystery. It's always the father-in-law that gets the drunkest and yells out that cliche mantra, show us your pink bits. And, you know, will you stick a dildo in it for a 20? You know, no one's going to consider sticking a dildo in it for less than 100, but it was just bad. They were really, really insulting. And the buck was usually pretty well behaved, but, you know, he was so drunk that I said in a book he wouldn't know if you were lap dancing or giving him a colonoscopy. It was just a drooling mess. And then you would get some horrible lucid bucks that wanted to sleep with you the night before the wedding, which was just disgusting.
Does that really happen?
Yeah, that really happens. For some bizarre reason, they haven't cheated if they've gotten in a quick last fuck before they tied the knot. Yeah, that really happens. Not luckily for the bride, but in the bride's favor, no stripper would do sex work. And every stripper I know of was fucking appalled by the suggestion.
Speaking of wives and partners, you had an incident where you were stripping in a small town at a club and a bunch of women came in and gave you a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah. The strip club had an adjoining nightclub. And the strip club never wanted us there, and neither did the townsfolk. You know, I'm surprised that they didn't show up with pitchforks and pyres to burn us at. But the one night that the strip club manager wasn't there and the nightclub owners were looking after the night, they opened the adjoining doors and just let the crowd come bustling through. There's just hundreds of girls just bent on being bitches.
Did you feel very vulnerable?
Yeah, that was probably the most vulnerable I've ever felt. You know, imagine being up a pole in nothing but a tiny little Brazilian bikini and a circle of girls at the bottom, all with their hands on their hips, staring up at you with pure hatred.
And what did they say?
Well, they started off with exactly what you would expect, like slut, mole, whore, just exactly what you would expect. And I had to climb down off that pole, get off the stage when it was time. But I think I had to be up there for, say, another 8 minutes or so, the longest 8 minutes of my life. I thought it was 8 years. Just being up there and having to still do your job and kind of writhe around that pole while there was just that judgmental, hateful crowd staring at you and screaming out insult. And then I had to get down off the stage and walk to the bar, and they all trailed behind me and were saying things like, if you come here to have sex with our men. I had to explain, no, we're not hookers, we're just strippers. And really had to talk myself out of a scary situation. But I found by being really candid, I was able to talk myself out of any violence happening because there was only 2 bouncers and hundreds of people in there.
And what did you tell the women that sort of turned things around?
Well, a lot of them were yelling out, things like hooker and prostitute. And I explained to them that we were neither. And in a lot of states, Queensland, for example, you actually can't be both. You're not allowed to legally solicit work from a strip club. You can't be a stripper or a hooker. So when I kind of pacified them by letting them know it was illegal for me to be a sex worker and that I was just pretty much here to be a naked dancer, they calmed down a little bit. And then I guess when I just proved to be a real girl, it is really hard for me when I've put on weight and, I'm embarrassed of my cellulite and I get a pimple and it's terrifying for me. But, I just really want to buy a beautiful house before I'm 30. And, so just by being on their level, it helped me escape. But Jesus Christ, it took a lot of tequila and being down to earth.
What are the best kind of customers when you're a lap dancer?
The ones that come in, look around the room, judge whether or not you're their type, don't say a word except, can I please have a dance, get their money out, and that's it. It's all over. There's no speaking, there's no smut, there's no innuendo. They're just simply there because they know exactly what it is they want to see. So, yeah, but, it's always nice when they don't speak. It always helps the night go a bit better if they don't talk.
Drugs and alcohol, is it sort of almost not a job requirement, but there's a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs?
There's a lot of drinking. There's party drugs. It's really rare that there's hard drugs. It happens, of course. But you can tell, you can see when a girl is on hard drugs. I mean, once or twice I've seen girls go on the nod in the change room and you kind of have to kick them awake and sort of say either see a counsellor or save it for later. But party drugs, they do help. They do help lift the mood, especially on a really despairing night where you've been insulted and degraded. And definitely alcohol to get rid of your inhibitions. And a lot of the guys want to buy you a drink anyway. And there is girls that don't drink.
Yeah, really? Because how do you not get messy?
You have water in between and just be aware of yourself. I've been messy though. I have been at work and I've been terribly messy. I've tripped over and face planted in 7-inch stilettos in front of the entire room. I lost a dance walking towards the lap dance room with a guy and I was just so drunk. And I just face planted and the guy just ran. He just didn't want a dance with the drunk, sloppy stripper. So, yeah, I mean, you can get pretty sloppy, but it is a bit of a trap.
What about partners? You had one real loser of a boyfriend.
Yeah, I had one that was an asshole.
Is there a certain type of guy that's attracted to women who strip?
No, I didn't think so. I mean, I never had the stereotypical stripper boyfriend who just is a fucking leech. They see what we can make in one night and it rivals their weekly pay packet. So after 2 weeks of going out with a stripper, they just sort of think, well, why would I work? I was lucky, even though my ex was a complete douche, he would get off his ass and work. I would have to force him. It was easy for him to be lazy. In saying that, he really liked the holidays overseas and the seafood platters and the $100 rounds of golf. And that's when we were all happy and getting along fine. But the second we weren't getting along, then I was a stripper slut.
Do many strippers meet their partners in the club?
None, not really, no. There might be the smallest percentage, but we generally stay away from the men that come in strip clubs. I mean, they're there to see random vaginas. You don't really want to get into a serious relationship with somebody like that.
What about celebrities? It surprised me to learn how many celebrities go to strip clubs. What are they like?
They're the worst behaved. They're the worst behaved of all. Once again, they're like that guy who has been rejected by every pretty female and comes to the strip club armed with a lack of respect to take it all out on you. And it was kind of parallel to that. Not really exactly the same, but definitely parallel, where strippers didn't deserve the kind of respect where they would keep back their demands or fantasies. So there was one A-lister who was just a fucking freak. And he actually had the audacity to ask me not to meet his eyes. So that happens too. That really happens when celebrities ask you not to look them straight in the eye.
How degrading.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I think it's more ridiculous than degrading that somebody has such a high opinion of themselves that any normal person that isn't in a movie isn't good enough to actually make eye contact with them. But he was a real freak, and he was talking to a friend of mine all night, and then he wanted to pay us a few $1,000s to come home and lay on the bed motionless in our costumes, not even naked, so he could whack off over us, which was kind of like a touch of necrophilia, I guess.
But there was a very famous rock band that came in that were lovely.
Yeah, but I think what varied with them was they were just so famous. At one point, they were the world's most famous band.
Can you give me a clue?
I can't.
Sing a song.
I can't.
Just hum it.
I wish I could. I wish I could, but my publishing solicitors will tear me to shreds.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry. I wish I could, but let's just say you probably would not go through a day of Australian radio without hearing one of their songs.
Okay.
And I think that they were just so famous that they'd done an about face. I think when you have the life that everyone dreams of, the private planes and the supermodels and the mansions and the limitless adoration, I think you actually start trying to look for what's real again. So I think a down-to-earth conversation with somebody that isn't famous and fawning is what they really wind up seeking all over again. I mean, it's only a theory. I don't know. They might have just started off nice people and not turned into douche lords along the way.
What made them nice?
Their interest in us. And they didn't even see our vagina. Their interest in what we do daily, what our lives are like, what our relationships are like, what we do as a hobby, what it feels like to be a stripper, almost like they were interviewing us and just wanting to get to know what down-to-earth people were like all over again.
Why did you get out of it, and when did you get out of it?
I got out of it about 6 years ago. It was just time. I went to work and I thought to myself, okay, I have to get rid of Sam and I have to put sunshine on. And so I have to stand here and quickly build up my resilience and get my persona going along with whatever outfit I'm going to wear. And it does take a little while to shuck off who you are and get your persona ready for the night. You have a drink and you relax into it and you hopefully talk to somebody nice, but it is a process, you know, and you can't let it take too long. You've got to get yourself together within 20 minutes because you've got the next 8 or 9 hours to be that person and hustle as hard as you possibly can. And I just went to work one night and I opened my locker, and instead of fishing out an outfit, I just put it all in my work bag, and that was it. It was exactly the way I started. There was no fireworks, no epiphany. I just did not want to turn into sunshine for one more night. I think I was just ready to say goodbye to the dawn being my nighttime and see what life would look like, having a daytime adventure and, you know, using my brain for other endeavors.
And what's life like now? You stopped stripping in your early 40s. What's life like now?
Life is really fantastic. It was really hard to begin with, just learning discipline again of getting up early in the morning and taking orders from somebody, because when you're at a strip club, managers are used to you telling them to fuck off. You don't really have to play by the rules at a strip club. And so it was difficult to get that discipline back after so many years of stripping, and also to try and find the right job to fit me as well.
And what did you find?
I did a series of jobs, content writing for websites for quite a while, because I did always want to be a writer. And then I also worked for Barrier Reef Australia, writing tour content. But it was just mind-numbing because I'd started stripping because I was a non-conformist and odd and didn't really fit into the realms of the real world and that stripping circus world. It just really, as I said, it suited me like a million spare bucks. And I love a good sleep in as well. But all that was taken away from me when it come time to join the real world. And it was a lot to transition. And then I had begun writing this book, Sunshine, The Diary of a Lap Dancer. I was really, really lucky. For a good 5 years there, I did everything I could to try and pitch this book or really, really get it noticed and self-publish. And I'd thought about doing all of that. And I was lucky. I had backing in the form of Jeff Lindsay, who is the author of the Dexter book series and TV series. And I had sent a few chapters to him and he was like, well, it would be a crime for you not to write this book. And once I wrote the book, I'm also good friends with the actor Stephen Curry. And I showed him the manuscript. It was like, it would be a crime not to turn it into a screenplay. So I was really lucky. I had two really talented men sort of saying, you really should be going for this. And a friend of mine from Channel 10, Mark Wallen, sent it to Roadshow Rough Diamond for me. And they just fell in love with it and flew me to Sydney within a month to discuss turning the book into a TV series. So the past year has sort of been me living my dream. And I know a lot of exotic dancers aren't as lucky because we don't always have a backup plan in place. I certainly didn't, I had no backup plan in place. And that's why the transition was just so difficult. But yeah, it's just, I'm living the dream.
Did you want to have a family?
No, I was never that girl.
But you got married?
Yeah, I'm married. I'm really, really happily married.
To a good guy?
Fantastic. Roadshow Rough Diamond call him the unicorn. I guess we get along so well because I pick up his shit while he puts up with my shit.
It's a very good description of a heterosexual relationship, I think.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. He's really beautiful. And he was a flatmate to strippers. I met him a few years after that, but he was a flatmate to a couple of strippers. So he got to see what we were all about. So by the time we met, he already knew we weren't sex workers and we would get home from work giggling our asses off about how much money we had extracted from people.
Is there a sisterhood among strippers?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there really, really is. There is a sisterhood. You can be having the most ferocious argument at the bar about maybe approaching one another's regular. It was always a pretty common one. But if an outsider tries to get in the middle of an argument between strippers, they both become unified and turn on you, like French Polish bed and cat teeth bed. And so, yeah, there is a sisterhood, but there is also frenemies. You also have the girl that it's like, no, really, red lipstick and red lace suits you. And I'm so fucking red toned that anything red makes me look like something that should be on a seafood platter. So, you'll get your frenemies as well that try and sabotage your money making. But, yeah, there is definitely a unity. And, because you go through that public scrutiny together.
Sunshine, you're amazing. Thank you so much for writing this book. I'm so excited that you are living your dream. You really deserve to be.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's so lovely of you.
You can buy Samantha's book, Sunshine, The Diary of a Lap Dancer, now, and we will put a link in the show notes. This episode was produced by Leah Porges. The executive producer of No Filter is Elissa Ratliff, and I'm Mia Friedman. I'll see you on mamamia.com.au.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.